call the Budget Committee meeting to order. And the next item on the agenda is to go around with self-introductions. My name is John Prather. I'm the board chair for the sanitary district. And I'm, as you probably see on the other sheet, I'm an Oceanside resident in Tennessee.
I'm Mike Randall. I live in Netarts, on the budget committee.
I'm Simeon Dreyfus. I'm on the board. I live in Oceanside.
I'm Brian Mello, lead operator.
Tyler Hotchkiss, assistant lead operator.
I'm Nick Renault, operator training.
JC Pyatt, I'm an office specialist.
Jeff McGrair, Lindy Tarts, Mike wrangled me into this.
Jerry Keith, Oceanside, I'm a board member.
Elizabeth Whipperman, Oceanside board member. Always late, sorry.
I'm Erin Mello, and I'm the assistant office manager.
Dan Mello, district superintendent.
All right. The next item is the budget calendar. Does anybody have any changes or suggestions to it? I might add that Kent Brown is in Europe right now and wasn't able to make the first meeting, but he'll make the second. He's been on the budget committee for several years, so I'm not expecting that he'll need any time at all to get up to speed, having done this before. Anybody have any suggested changes or any clarification needed for the budget calendar? If not, we'll go ahead and proceed. The budget officer, who is Jerry Keene, will present the budget documents and the budget message. If at any time anybody has a question, I think we ought to just try to answer at that point rather than waiting to get through everything and then go backwards.
Okay.
So I'm sure there'll be some questions along the way.
Well, I think y'all got the email with the budget message. We've gone over, it's just an explanation of the pieces of the budget, how we put it together. I think the key part of it is that we do have an increase this year of $10 a month in our fees, and it allocates $5 a month. It allocates the increase between capital and general fund, and kind of outlines what those of us on the board already know. Talks about the way the expenses are allocated for stuff that's wearing out, stuff we have to replace, services, staff. We had an increase in one staff member last year. We don't have one budgeted for a new one for next year.
No.
So that, is just basically allocated for inflation. And we went with a 5% increase, which is less than full inflation, but more than we have done in the past. It's kind of a middle of the road approach, and it's in line with other districts. Staff is constantly checking, looking at what's going on with the other districts and their budgeting and things to make sure we're not out of line in one direction or another. In addition to the budget document, I think it's interesting and important that John worked up a debt analysis for us that we really haven't had in the past. It's not part of the formal budget that kind of shows the different bonds we have and the maturity, the payoffs, and gives you an idea of how long in the future we're committed, and kind of keep track of that compared to the depreciation in the equipment that we bought with those bonds, and kind of keep those things parallel, so that in the future when we need to replace big items, we've got new debt available to do it. In terms of the numbers, I'm not really the best person to go over them individually. Did you want that, or did you? Because I'm going to turn that over to Dan.
Yeah, we could just take a page and, see if there's any questions that anybody has.
Yeah, if you haven't done this before, and I hadn't, public budgeting is basically a thing. It's got terms and forms that people use, state forms that people use, And online at the Oregon State Revenue, Department of Revenue, they've got a couple of seminars that are actually helpful. I've watched a couple of them when we were doing the incorporation debate. I looked at them and also getting ready for this. And I would say that if you don't have experience with these, they are a really good orientation, because this stuff is overwhelming at first. And the more you look at it, the more you start to see that there's a format, there are conventions that they follow, and then you start to get it. The pieces fall together. But even at our meeting on this budget, I was still forcefully going at staff saying, I don't get this, I don't get this, explain that again. If you have any of those situations, please don't be intimidated by that. That's what I had it. Others have it. You need something explained, just ask to have it explained. There are no dumb questions and there are no dumb people. This isn't intuitive. This is specialty stuff. And you need to learn it and to understand it. Okay. You just want to go in big picture over the way it's presented in terms of general fund and resources and all that stuff?
Okay, so, I don't know, on the first page, on the general fund, do you have any specific questions anybody has? Go ahead.
Okay, let me explain something. Line 16, the low-income discount program. Dan, our superintendent, decided that this ought to be a separate fund rather than within the general fund. So you'll see a marked up in yellow page, which is the last page, that still needs to be refined somewhat. It will be transferred, the money will be transferred and zeroed out here, and apparently it's about $6,000 actually in the fund. It'll be zeroed out under the general fund, be in that new fund line, and that will be brought on through a resolution by the board. And we're also gonna have to look at how the resolution was written that allowed for handing out funds from that fund, because it's probably about 20 years old, the resolution. It's quite old in any case. And it needs to be looked at in view of more recent history in regard to how funds would be distributed.
Criteria.
In the criteria, correct.
And it was kind of, there was no accurate way because it came in under other revenue. So there was no accurate way to separate the donations from the ratepayers' general fund, what they actually pay. And so for transparency, any donations need to be in their own fund, because it's not supported off of user fees. So I felt we needed to get that out where it's a standalone, because if it does deplete all of its funds, we're not budgeting to add more funds to it.
What do you do when somebody doesn't pay for a prolonged period? You put a cork in their line or something?
Well, no. No, so if somebody fails to pay their sewer fee throughout the year, at the end of the year, at the end of June, their accounts are turned over to the county for collection on their taxes. So then that account will, in our books, will go to zero. So we won't know until they start collecting property tax when we'll be paid for that.
Okay. Doesn't seem like a lot of money is given to that purpose by ratepayers.
What do you mean?
Well, $6,000.
No, so the $6,000 is donations only for
That's what
low
I mean.
income. Yeah.
That's what I
To those that could fall into a low-income poverty category, which probably there are not
So
very
you wouldn't
many of
send them
those
to
people.
county tax collectors if they.
Well, people apply ahead of time, so they know,
Yeah.
they
They
know
have
if they're
to
in the program.
apply.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if they didn't pay, I mean, it's a discount, not a total waiver.
Okay,
So
well,
if
that's
they-
fine. I'm not
So,
worried about it.
yeah, so if they fall onto a hardship, then they just fill out, and there's the application if they meet all the requirements, and then that fund can pay
Okay.
that sewer fee.
All right,
So they're not put into collections.
okay.
But
we-
typically at the end of the year, there's a list of people, especially ones that wait till the very end of the year.
Yeah,
And they wait till like their second default notice and then they pay it all at once.
yeah.
But there's some that just don't pay and they get turned over to the county for collections, we zero them out.
But they also pay a monthly penalty, correct? How much is that?
$8.13 for a single family dwelling.
For each month in arrears or?
Yes, so,
I was wondering about line 11 there, other revenue. Are the fees to locate or inspect new fees that didn't previously get?
So under
Charge.
other revenue is anything, okay, so like inspection fee is $50, that will go into other revenue. If we receive funds outside of like the bond collection stuff, that goes into other revenue.
The inspection fees are fees that you charge the person for
On
your
hookup.
inspection.
On
hookup.
on a new
Okay.
hookup, yeah.
Okay. But I just wondered if those were new fees that had not previously been charged by the district.
No, so this page is an
Which is
estimate.
increase, a
No.
considerable amount there from last year.
Right, because what we do is we look at the previous budget and see how much we received.
Yeah.
And if we, instead of going negative, we always try to increase that to keep up. That line has nothing to do with user fees.
Right,
These
yeah.
are our budget, just like
I
the
wondered if you
90,000.
bill separately for that
Right.
purpose.
It's like on line one, that 90,000, that's our estimate that'll be cash carry forward in general fund.
Right.
It's not in stone, it's not 100% accurate, it's where we're at now, and we estimate where we'll be at the end of June.
Okay.
Interest went up because, interest rates have gone up in savings accounts and stuff, so we have to count for that. The auditor does not like us to short that, or it goes over, so they've had us make sure that we pay attention, and that they'd rather see it over budgeted than under budgeted. So where the user fees come in, what the ratepayers pay, that's line 8. And with the increase, but also in there, you can see this even without an increase, you can see it go up. Because as new ratepayers come on, build new homes, that will also change. So we track that all year long to see how much that changes in our collection for the user fees. Line 12 is transfer from other funds. If we have something catastrophic or a large emergency, we can transfer out of our capital resource into this fund, in the general fund. That's why it says transfer in from other funds. And the only one that's set up to transfer in from is capital resource. Line 15, the IGA, that's the agreement we have with the Netarts-Oceanside Fire District. They are owners of a portion of our new shop in the back. That's their satellite office, emergency operations. So if there's ever a problem in Netarts, they lose their station, they have an emergency place set up. It's got radios, it's got all kinds of emergency equipment.
This is right here.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just in the back.
Yeah.
It's when you come in, you'll see the front shop, it's the one in the back.
Okay.
So they're paying rent, is that? It
It's
says payment here.
Yeah, so it's not rent, it is what we calculated out for water, electricity, internet usage.
Sewer
Because
service.
they own the space, right?
Yes.
They own the
Yeah.
space, not the property, they
Right.
just own their portion of the building.
Right.
And that also
Sounds
covers
like
Utilities and services.
the liability insurance is on us because it's one building. So they pay their portion of that as well, property insurance.
So that's a sum of parts.
Yeah,
I noticed that it was 4,000 in 21, 22, and then it went down in 22, 23, and then it went back up.
insurance rates are a big dictator of
Ah,
how that. So the first year was an estimate, the next year, we were a little closer on what we needed. And then, of course, when you get, your insurance rates are jacked up over 12%, 18%, and then that affects them.
yeah.
And this also gives a buffer, if something else happens, it gives us a little bit of a buffer. And it may not be everything that we collect, we won't necessarily collect 4,000, but if something goes up throughout the year, it gives the fire department also something to budget for too. And then the AR certification from county assessor, that's an estimate of what we turn into the county assessor, right?
Yeah, and it has to do with the taxes as well.
Yeah. So we receive tax revenue to pay the geo bonds, And we also have a small tax base that we receive. It's really low, it's like 0.007 something percent.
And that's line 30?
Line 17.
No, but the tax estimate to receive in line 30, which taxes are those?
That encompasses, yeah, that encompasses our permanent tax rate.
Okay.
Yeah, the way you talked about it, the taxes were also in the accounts receivable, so that's why he was asking.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
Any other questions? Okay. So then,
So that's 1.7.
page
and
2.
Resources on general fund. And just looking at requirements. Basically payroll.
On line 6, the amount did not go up 5%. It's the same in 2022 as proposed this year.
So that was from our trainee, we hired him on full-time,
Yeah.
and he's not making that amount.
Okay.
So there's gonna be a surplus there, so there was no need to raise that line item. You'll actually see that there'll be two like that.
Okay, I only saw one. Oh, yeah.
No, and line 10's the same way.
Ah, yes it is. Okay.
And then off the personnel services, the wages down below, your payroll taxes, your workers' comp and all that goes off of that, proportionately.
One interesting thing is that our general liability insurance went up a negligible amount, and I can't explain that. Everybody else's insurance has gone up. It's not a,
It was only 2%
Yeah.
increase on medical. Or usually it's in the double digits on percentage.
In our medical insurance, it's a pool with SDAO, Special Districts of Oregon, of which we are a member. And I believe they have the pool which we participate in. If we were out there on our own, we would probably be getting killed.
Yeah. Instead of badly wounded.
same thing's true with our general liability insurance, isn't it? We're with an SDAO.
Yeah,
insurance
SGIS.
pool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
The consulting services, legal, engineering, doubled.
You wanna answer that, Jerry?
We have a number of projects that we're anticipating will need some engineering,
Mhm.
especially, and perhaps some legal. There are some issues involving the leaks that we had this last year, the 2 small leaks that we're anticipating, and being proactive on, possible need for legal expenses dealing with the state as they respond to it. We're still in the middle of those responses.
That's what I expected.
So
Yes,
both-
it was, but
yeah.
I-
You would be at odds with the state, you mean, and not because of those leaks, and you'd have to pay penalties, you mean?
Or we're actually, no, it's really, right now, it's in collaboration with them agreeing on how to go forward on things. And things that we're doing in response to those leaks that we're anticipating design fees for.
Yeah.
And some of this we were in the process of doing anyway, so it's kind of dovetailing, with it. But,
I just
some
wonder
of
about the
it,
legal fee aspect of it.
yeah, some of it we have to discuss in the executive session.
That's fine.
But for a number of reasons, based on some interactions between the state and other people, we're anticipating that it's responsible to be significantly increasing those consulting fees.
We also know of development coming in, so we will pay our engineers out of that. We get reimbursed by the developer, but that goes back into other revenue. So you can't put it directly back. It would be nice, I mean, Jerry asked if we could, but there's no mechanism to put it back in the line item that you take it out of. The only thing you can bring it back in is through other revenue.
And
So even though it's reimbursed, that line item doesn't reflect that.
Specifically, the biggest thing coming down the pipe, we were talking about it before the meeting, is the Avalon Two expansion above Grand Avenue is 60+ home sites. He's just at the beginning of developing,
Yeah.
and so there's gonna be some expenses that get paid by us as those come online or are inspected or get permitted, and then some of those things that come back to us from the contractor, the developer.
So, this is actually, not exactly this line item, it's part of the SDC fund, but we're assuming only 7 new homes in the next year.
Yeah.
And it seems like, given that we know that Avalon's happening,
Well, he's building like 3 or 5 at a time, over a year. If you look at the onlines for this year, outside of Avalon, there's only been like 6 this year.
We do off historic
Right.
data collection, and then what we know is out there pending.
yeah,
You can't budget so much that you're gonna try to take in almost every lot that can be built on. So
Right.
realistically, that's what we look at. Sometimes we're under that estimate in the next fiscal year, sometimes we go over it.
and we had, I think, 16 hookups so far this last year, is that true?
I don't have that in front of me.
I was counting them up off of
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, yeah. And there'll be sometimes you'll get 2 and 3 in 1 month, and then it'll
Yeah.
be 3 or 4 months, 5 months,
Right.
and you won't get anything.
I was just wondering if that number was low, the 7.
That's a discussion we always have when we prep the budget, especially when we get to that. What's the building, what's the economy gonna be like?
Yeah.
We've put in there that much before and only had 1, you know, but it was a building boom up until that point. So we try to be somewhat realistic and modest on that. If that goes over, it's not devastating. I
Right.
mean, it's better that it go over. So.
Yeah, okay.
For our new members, SDC system development charges, and that recently went up from we had a study performed, and it had been, I don't know how many years since the last time it was looked at.
I think, what'd we find out, like almost 15?
15, perhaps
Yeah.
15 years. So it went up from something around 9,000 to 13?
It went from 9,800 to 13,800.
So if
Roughly.
somebody's building a new property or wants to hook up, it's gonna cost them that 13,000 plus basically from now on. So, and that goes into that fund page
Mhm.
later on in this process that you'll see. And that is mainly for, new development, or, for instance, Avalon West down in the hollow there, there's been talk for some time, some number of years, of putting in a small pump station down in the hollow to allow some of that land to be developed on the side of that. And that SDC would be the perfect fit to pay for what needs to be done to design that process and put in the pump station down there.
By the land.
Does the 13,800, that's just to hook it up, it's not to run the trenches and the piping and all that?
That's correct, that is just the fee,
Yeah.
just the fee standalone. To answer maybe something to help clarify, we've had 6 sewer availability permits sitting for 2 years. And those have been hanging out there that we know that when you budget those in, that you're gonna collect. Well, it's been 2 years sitting, and he's just now moving on one of them. There's still 5 more sitting out there. We don't know what the developer's going to do. So even though we may have more sewer availability letters out for potentially getting permits to build, they could sit there for a year or 2 before they even move on them. So, and we've had some in there that are 10 years old that they have to start the process over. But. So
What happens if get twice as many, if we get 14.
So if we get 14, it just shows that line item goes over. It just goes over the amount that we projected we were going to collect.
And then that just stays in the fund.
It just stays in the fund. Your fund is just bigger, so when you do budget next year, it'll accommodate for that. It'll take that in.
There'll be more cash on hand.
Yeah, your cash on hand goes up.
And also, there was a study done, it's getting a little bit dated, I think it was 2019, was the big plan that the engineering firm did.
Facility plan?
Facility plan. And it had a number of projects in it that were suggested. Dan had a large input into that, but that was suggested for future capital improvements or increases or additional development. And we need to look at that because the SDC fund will probably, before too long, approach close to $1 million. It's about 900.
If the projects do come through, it'll be over $1 million before we sit down and do budget again next year.
I mean, and it doesn't make any sense not to use the money for the purpose for which it was intended.
It can only be used for sewer expansion. That's all it can be used for.
Right.
SDCs.
SDCs, yes, yeah. Which is not part of your general fund or your user rate.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump us ahead to that, but we were talking about Avalon, so it seemed like
No,
an opportune time to bring it up.
So on line 23, you'll see that hasn't changed in 3 years. The reason being, we just went through the COVID shutdown, so we haven't really used that fund. And so this year, they're just now starting to open it back up, and we're almost to the end of our fiscal year anyway. So we left it at that. So that covers training for staff and board members as well. So when you go to SDO training and things like that, that covers for the board members to go.
and you'll look at the electricity, it's probably more than you pay monthly to our folks, but we spend a lot of money on keeping the pumps running, so. And let me back up, Jerry was very careful when he said leaks. These, the Department of Environmental Quality considers them spills. And both spills were not that large, but there's a concern for anything that gets into the bay. And both spills were in the vicinity of or involved close to the Netarts pump station down there by the boat ramp. So being so low, it's a potential problem, and there's some differences in opinion what the folks in DEQ over in Portland think ought to be done as opposed to what we think ought to be done. And so that's an ongoing conversation right now. So that's, since you're both from Netarts, that's the place that's most sensitive right now.
I wondered, yeah, because I've been down there one time when it popped, yeah.
And that side of the budget, think we can have conversations about that as, board members or as members of the public. It's just kind of a side trip in terms of the budget.
And they're coming down here sometime in the course of the next several weeks and probably get a better idea of the physical characteristics and the lay of the land at the pump station as far as what can or can't be done.
In terms of strengthening it materially, so it wouldn't break or
Or relocating, or the,
Well, I don't think you could relocate. Dan is the expert on that, but if at any time you have an interest and you want to see what's inside that building, it's a big generator, and it's a lot of pumps, and 4 pumps, I think, right?
Yeah. I would recommend that that's a side trip on the budget, but like after this meeting, if you want to talk about.
Yeah.
What happens, it's not a secret, it's just a side
Yeah.
trip. That'll take
Yeah.
us quite a while if we don't stick
Yeah.
with the budget.
Yeah. So, anyway, okay.
The notes to line 26, is there any concern about getting the supplies timely and having equipment that is up to date enough to receive replacement parts? You got a 25% increase on that line item.
So on that, we have estimated ship times for replacement parts up to 22, 23 weeks out. Case in point, we have 3 valves that we've ordered for the 3 treatment basins. One is broken, one doesn't work right now, so 1 basin's down. We're not gonna receive those until the middle of August, and we ordered them last month. We ordered a new blower that we had just failed, that was $7,700. Estimated time was 21 weeks. We received it today, and it's only been a week.
Yeah.
So that's how volatile, manufacturing and shipping is. So we're gonna have to keep more parts on hand than we've ever had to in the past. Just because we cannot go out of compliance because we can't repair a treatment basin or disinfection or a pump station. So.
And that's a function just since COVID, more or less? Supply chain?
Yeah, pretty much. It was never that bad. You used to be able to get stuff within 2 weeks. So you didn't really have to carry that much of a surplus of spare parts in inventory all the time. Well, now we have to carry them. I mean, even trying to get oil and fan belts is ridiculous anymore. Everything has, brakes are weeks out to put brakes on one of our vehicles. Where you used to just go to the Napa and pick them up that day. So yes, we do have to spend more to put spare parts on the shelf to keep everything working.
Dan spends a lot of time every meeting talking about this and what he's doing to get ahead of things that might be wearing out or to have spares on the shelf.
But the 25% increase though just kind of leaped out to me over the preceding year.
Well, we also use the O&M, that's why you'll see it 501,385. We use that to also, so the budget will calculate at the bottom. So you have your page 1 for the increase, for the user rates and all that.
Yeah.
That number and that number have to match.
Right. Oh, so it's a make it match.
Right, so all the funds are accounted for, and O&M is always the one that gets hit the hardest, the quickest.
Yeah.
So anything, we always put it into that fund.
Okay.
So, the next one that we have is the system development charge fund. Cash on hand is what we're anticipating we're gonna have by the end of this fiscal year on line 1. Interest rates, what we assume that we're gonna receive off of that money. System development charges, those are what we're estimating to receive for the next fiscal year.
And that's
Yeah.
largely due to the increase from 9,800 to 13,800.
And estimated that we're gonna pick up a few more connections.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on the lower part, you have your resources and your requirements. So in order to spend anything out of the fund on the resources of the 1,152,000, you have to match that at the bottom. So we took and we budgeted 50,000 for consulting services, which is engineering, that type of stuff, any environmental work we have to do. Sewer expansion, because that's all it could be used for. So those 2 lines there will add to the bottom of the 1,152,000, and that's how you get your total. It's not 1,152,000 twice. It's what you receive and what you've budgeted you can spend out of that.
Right.
So, and those consulting services are solely for sewer expansion?
Solely for sewer expansion. You can use it for, like we just did the methodology for the, I'm like, I wanna keep wanting to say user fees.
Yes, CDC.
For SDCs, so you can use it for that
Oh,
type of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's all you can use it for.
And
Cannot be used for repairs.
the sewer expansion on that line item 7 has jumped 300% since 2021. It's just lots of new places and.
Yes, yes.
In that period.
There's nothing there that's
Plus that
budgeted,
number includes the increase.
there's nothing there that's budgeted off of user fees. Nothing in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the SDCs were increased
Right.
quite a bit, so.
So the next page, capital resource fund. That's our estimated cash on hand by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. Interest, just like the last fund, what we estimate we'll receive in interest. Sewer service fee, this is the increase, it shows the increase from last year to this year. That'll be going into that fund.
And when was the last service fee increase? Just a year or two ago? I can't remember. And
Last
what-
year was $10, yes.
Yeah. What drove that? I mean, is it an amorphous bunch of stuff or thing in particular? What's driven, you usually have an increase every year? I don't remember. I think
No,
about
no,
10
no,
years.
I think the one before last year, it was over 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
It was.
It's been several years.
Oh, okay.
We kept it stable for like 5 or 6 years, and we actually had a board policy that we're gonna stop doing that, that we're gonna start more incremental.
Yeah, I believe that you gotta chip away at it year after year and then you don't have an explosion.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's, the board's on that page.
So that's your resources, the first line of 1 through 12, that's your total estimate. And then, of course, we have to account for that 701,620. And if you look at the placeholders that we have in place, you don't necessarily have to spend this money, okay? You're not necessarily gonna buy another vehicle, but you can't buy a vehicle if you need one unless it's in the budget.
And that's why there's no changes in the amount.
That's why there's no changes in the amount.
Because it kind of jumped out at me
Yeah.
that the requirements were essentially the same.
Yeah. Right now, that wouldn't cover a new vehicle if you were to buy a brand new, because we only buy trucks and stuff like that. So, due to we have to do the increase, and I just need a placeholder there in case we have something we have to get for a vehicle. Like if we have to equip one with a crane, or we have to, change out the service boxes or something like that, it can come out of that fund, out of that line.
Yeah. And it's also, there's some proactive budgeting going on, because they know that fairly soon, one of the beds out here is gonna have to be cleaned out and solids dealt with. And that's gonna be like a $200,000 expense, maybe, we're not even sure.
250.
Yeah, so we're trying to build the fund up a bit, anticipate
That's
that
the
coming.
solid management, that's line 5.
Yeah. So you understand that what Jerry was saying about biosolids management, you see the 82,860, you can go over any one of these line items. You just cannot go over the bottom, the 701,000. So you may choose to not move it technically, but you may go over your 82,000 by 50,000. Well, that just means that you have less to say spend on a vehicle,
Yeah.
upgrade or something.
So I had a question on, this is on the explanations document and not on the spreadsheet.
Which page?
Page 6, under item 6. There's a sentence that reads, future pumping and processing sludge lagoons and emergencies, that just doesn't flow for me. I don't understand what that sentence is doing there.
Which sentence is that?
Line 6.
It's page 6, line 6 on the capital resources reserve fund resources. sewer reserve fee, $10 of the $80 is dedicated to the fund, and then there's a sentence, future pumping and processing of sludge lagoons and emergencies. And then it says this line represents. And that sentence in the middle of that paragraph, is that the biosolids in line 5 on the next page under requirements?
I think that came from staff, and I'm not sure we talked about it.
I think 16, yes. Biosolids 5 does match with pumping.
Yes, so I think what it's referring to is the future pumping and processing of sludge lagoons, which is what Jerry had said earlier, which are the holding
Right.
lagoons,
Right,
pumping
right.
lagoons.
That's line 5, the biosolids.
So that's line 5 under requirements, but why is that sentence in the sewer
Yeah.
service reserve fee
It looks
paragraph?
it looks like either a really shorthand reference to something, or it's a cut and paste error. But it's a fragment without a verb.
Put a 5 in front of future pumping and we're good. For line 5.
Yeah. Do you see what's going on there? Yeah.
Yeah, so all these 1s, 4s, 6, 9, those all referencing, well, it's not referencing over here. Because there is no,
And
there is
if
no
the point of
line.
the document, the explanations document, the message, the district budget message is to be transparent and clear and understandable. If I'm confused, then I wonder if somebody in the public might be confused.
I don't know, I either missed that when I was reading it for editing, or that's just an editing thing that happened. It needs a verb. and it needs-
We'll fix it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So are there any questions on the capital resource fund? The rest, these debt service that you see on the next 2 pages, those are already set on a payment plan that's already given to us. So we don't have any input really on how we're going to, well, we can't change anything on these lines. You have your interest payment and you have your principal payments.
My only question on this page was on line 8 under resources. The taxes estimated to be received is actually going down a little bit from this year. It was 939,751, and now it's 938,696.
Well, generally, there's 2, in my experience of this, and I'm not a financier,
Right,
so
right.
what it is generally when you bring on more properties, more ratepayers, and as the bonds drop, well, it actually has to do mainly with ratepayers coming on. So when you have more to spread it across, values go up. This usually decreases a little bit every year.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not clear about why it decreases a little bit.
I mean, it is only what?
Because it's-
Because you only-
$55
If there's a
decrease,
bond,
but nonetheless.
there's a bond measure
Mhm.
that's paying, so and we voted in taxes to pay off the bond measures, so.
But on the amortization sheet, that's all they can collect.
Oh, yeah.
That's all they can collect. So you can't collect more to pay it off sooner, I guess
Right.
is the simple way to say it. So it's gonna drop,
As we're getting closer every year, just a little bit
yeah,
closer.
and as you bring on more payers, that
Yeah,
decreases the
okay.
amount,
Yeah.
as you bring on more payers.
Okay, now the math makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're only authorized to collect those
Yeah,
payments,
yeah, no,
that's
no.
it.
I
It's a flat rate.
was just like, why is that going down?
And
But,
yeah, and you can also see it's not going down for the out years, for the Oh, never mind, I'm sorry. Never mind.
It has gone down in the years that were collected and the estimated
Yeah,
are
yeah,
still
you're right.
going down, and I was
Yeah.
just like, well, why is that number going down?
Yeah.
Now it makes sense to me.
Yeah, as soon as you look at the 3 previous years
Yeah,
on line 7
Yeah, yeah.
across, you'll see why it drops.
well, I see that it drops, but I
Yeah.
wasn't clear about why.
Yeah. We're only legally allowed to collect what it takes to satisfy those.
Well, yeah, the answer was, there's more people, so.
Yes, yes,
So, it goes down a little bit,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that.
And next page, it follows through with the same principles we just discussed. And then finally, Fund 5, or Low Income Resource Fund that we're working on now.
Yeah, that needs a page 7 at the bottom.
Yeah,
Page wasn't numbered.
it's not numbered because it hasn't really been adopted yet.
Oh, okay.
So,
It needs to be
this,
cleaned up.
yeah, this is a draft. The board, as you see the question marks, Low Income Resource Fund's got question marks. So you as the board will have to decide exactly what you're gonna name it and how you're gonna do it. That's why there's question marks on line 6 for low income donations.
Yeah.
Are the donations, like, how are those collected? Who are the people that are donating?
Whoever, right now, it's only done through people that pay with check. So on your card, your bill you get, you'll see a little slot on, or a little for adding a cash donation onto that, $5 or whatever.
Gil pays the bills, so I never see.
Okay, so it's not available online through autopay. And we are doing some research if that can be put on that. When this was first started, all we had mainly were people that were paying by check, or, you know. So, that's what even got it harder then to try to track where the donations and how much were coming in. And so the reason I wanted this completely separate is this is donation funds, not to be used to, you know, work on pumps and things like that, so. And once this is depleted from just donations, that's what funds it, then of course, it's not coming out of user rates. So,
So what has that been like? I don't remember what that was in previous years.
well, in previous years,
What's it becoming? I know that you don't quite know what it's becoming yet, but, as people get older, have had, harder to pay the bills, et cetera, including the sewer district bill.
so under general fund is where it came in through other revenues, so if you go back to page 2, and you drop down to, line 27,
Yeah.
you'll see
Oh, I
that
see, the previous years.
the previous years, they just estimated 3,700. Well, I had the office do an audit on that,
Yeah.
and come to find out there was 6,000 in there
Oh.
that had been donated. Now, after this, we've had people use it, but just not that much. So I wanted to clean that up, get this out of general fund, because it has nothing to do with
Right.
user rates,
So-
anything like that.
But, my question is my question. Aside from the fact that we're a nation in decline in many ways, that's another matter, or part of this one maybe. But,
That's later on the agenda.
yeah, later on the agenda, we're doing the big collapse, that's right. 3,700, I mean, how many people, is there a growing number of people asking for these subsidies?
Aaron, I mean, we've had,
We have one this year.
yeah,
Oh, no, just that.
but it's limited to 65 or older. And that's
Oh.
one what the board has to now decide what they're gonna do. Are they gonna say low income for, senior, okay? Or low income, and Jerry was right, it says low income resources. It doesn't state on there that it's for seniors or it's for anybody that's low income.
Oh,
So we have to go back to the resolution.
Yeah,
But the demographic in Netarts-Oceanside over 65 is
Pretty good.
primarily self-sufficient.
Yeah.
If they're not, they're relocating.
Yeah.
They're going to the valley closer to medical care and social resources. So, just from the incorporation research we did and stuff, that the financial demographic here, according to the census, is actually pretty silly how high
Yeah.
it is, on average.
if I could add a little history on this particular item. We had lots of community discussions during the time when we were deciding on moving the plant, rebuilding the plant. And so the concern is that it was such a big bill to the community that there would be people that had been living here forever,
Forced out.
and they would be priced out of their home because of the sewer bill would be a lot more than what they were used to paying. So we established this fund in order to help that issue. I don't know if that helps explaining it at all, but that's how I remember how it went down.
Where's the information on it posted? Is it just on the website, or are there like flyers anywhere or anything?
For this fund,
For the, yeah, just like that,
On the
that
bill.
service is available.
just on the bill.
It's on the line item.
Yeah, but anywhere else. Like
No.
The people who
No.
need it are getting bills and they can't pay it. They see a thing on the bill that says there's help available.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm saying.
I'm working with-
It's a point of
Yeah.
need advertising.
I guess I work with a lot of low-income people and, people who are houseless, which not so much in Oceanside, but it's around. And sometimes there's some cognitive barriers that, sometimes they need a little bit more push, a little bit more encouragement, or just seeing something, they might look at a bill and just see it as a bill and not, they might not be reading all of it.